The mic's off.
Yate, my relatives, hello. This is Mark Charles. It is Friday, January 26th, and I'm sitting here with my second cup of coffee. It's early afternoon, but I wanted to have a conversation about politics 2024. So before I began, let me just do as I always do, which is acknowledge I'm speaking to you from Piscataway lands, now known as Washington, D.C., and I want to honor the Piscataway as the host of the land where I'm living. I want to thank them for their stewardship of these lands. So I have not said a lot recently about the political races going on. I've been obviously watching the news very carefully. I've been paying attention to some of the debates, and I've been listening to both the antics of Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And I'm everywhere I go, people come up to me and ask me, if I'm running this year, or am I gonna join the campaigns this year and put my own hat in the ring. And I've been telling people, no, that's not part of my plans this year. I decided that it would not be very strategic to try and run again in 2024. But I do obviously have some opinions about what's going on, and I wanted to talk with you a little bit about some of those. So first of all, I'm sure we all know, right? The Iowa caucuses and the New Hampshire primary are over, and if you've been listening, both Biden and Trump are acting like they're already both the presumptive nominees. And I'm going to share a few articles with you here. George Yate, thanks for joining. Jermaine Yate, thank you for joining. Mr. Phil Fox, good to see you. Thank you all three for joining. Here, let me share one of these links with you here. Terry Yate, good to see you. Thanks for being here. So here's an article in the AP News that is titled, "The Primaries Have Just Begun, but Trump and Biden are already shifting to a November mindset." There's also was an article on The Hill, and this one is specifically about Joe Biden. And this one is titled, Joe Biden, "It's clear Trump will be the Republican nominee." And then, if you've heard just recently, there was a resolution within the RNC to basically name Trump as the presumptive nominee. This, again, just after two contests have been held, Iowa and New Hampshire. Both of these are really low population states. But after they're over now, both parties are acting like Trump has won, and Joe Biden is ready to kick into general election gear, and Trump is very eager to kick into the gear of being the presumptive nominee. And this is it's very expected, but it's also very disturbing. Right? Iowa and New Hampshire are just a fraction. They're very small states population-wise. They do not make up any sort of significant majority of our country. And if you look at the different stats, right, I'm going to just share a few things with you. I shared this a lot. I talked about this a lot when I was running for president back in 2020. White population, right? I'm going to share a few links with you. Iowa is the sixth whitest state in the country at 82.9%, and New Hampshire is the fourth whitest state in the country at 86.7%. In regards to private versus public lands, Iowa is the fourth highest percentage of private lands in the United States. And in regards to home ownership, depending on what website you look at, I looked at a lot of different ones. Iowa and New Hampshire rank in the top 10. This one, the link I'm sharing here, has Iowa as the sixth highest state of home ownership, and New Hampshire is the seventh highest state of new ownership. Right? And these are the people who voted. So far, we have a very small percentage of our nation that has voted in the primaries, and it's overwhelmingly been white landowning men who have voted so far. And both Biden and Trump, both the Democrats and the Republicans, are ready to say, okay, well, white landowning men have had their say. So obviously, the other 48 states and all the people of color and everyone else doesn't really matter. And this is what is so disgusting about politics in the United States of America, which is we think that once the white landowning male has spoken, that's it. There's no more discussion. This is just what it's about, and this is who we are. And now that the important voices have said their thing, right? And even Joe Biden, who is trying to look good, right? He's trying to say he didn't actually run in New Hampshire. He was a write-in candidate there. He didn't put his name on the ballot there. He didn't go into the Iowa caucuses because he said he was going to make South Carolina the first state he ran in, and obviously South Carolina has a much higher number of black voters. But he's going in there essentially saying, okay, you can vote for me, but I'm already assuming Trump has won, and there's really no other choice of who else to vote for in the Democratic primary. So I'm giving black people the first vote, but they can really only vote for me. There's no other options. And we've already decided that it's going to be me and Trump before we even get to South Carolina. So again, it's this lip service that he's giving to the black voters in South Carolina when he's really not giving them a choice whatsoever, or acknowledging that they're having a choice whatsoever. And again, this is just what this nation built on racism, sexism, and white supremacy does. It elevates the voice of the white landowning male, and it diminishes the voice of the female and other people who are not identifying as male, and obviously white and landowners, or non-white and non-landowners, are also deeply diminished. And this is troubling. I'm going to just share with you a few graphics here because let's look at the two primaries that have happened so far, right? And these are both from AP News sites. I'll put both of their links into the chat. The first one is regard to the Iowa caucuses, and I'm going to put that into the chat right now. And then the second one is regard to the New Hampshire primaries. Both of those links are now in the chat, but I want to show you some graphics. First, we'll look at the Iowa caucuses. You can see Donald Trump in Iowa had 51% of the vote at 56,000 votes. Ron DeSantis got 21.2% at 23,000 votes, and Nikki Haley got 19% of the vote with 21,085. After Iowa, Ron DeSantis dropped out, and then Nikki Haley. And Ron DeSantis, by the way, endorsed Donald Trump. He endorsed Donald Trump. And so, again, you would figure that Trump's lead would expand even more if he's going to get 21% of the white landowning male vote. You would think he would go up into the 60s or 70s in New Hampshire, and Nikki Haley would probably drop even lower. But if we look at what happened in New Hampshire, Donald Trump got 54% of the vote, and Nikki Haley got 43% of the vote. And yet both parties, both the Democrats and the Republicans, both Donald Trump and Joe Biden, are ready to say, well, this race is now over. Donald Trump's the presumptive nominee for the Republicans, and Biden's obviously the presumptive nominee for the Democrats, or for the Democrats. And right, Nikki Haley, she went up significantly going into New Hampshire. And now we're going into South Carolina, which is where she was governor. And so I would agree with Nikki Haley, and she is telling her supporters that this race is far from over. She is in this for the long haul. All we've had are two minor states with a majority of white landowning men voting, and they do not constitute a majority in our political process, right? And so let's just, this is insane that we're calling this race already just because a bunch of white landowning men have voted. And so I completely agree with Nikki Haley that it's exciting to me that she's seeing this as the long haul. It seems very promising for her campaign that she gained so much more support in New Hampshire than she had in Iowa. And who knows what's going to happen in South Carolina. Although, there's a lot of expectation that Trump is going to expand his lead there, but I think it's still pretty wide open. And so, yeah, I will watch the primary in South Carolina very closely. I'm also really interested to see what Joe Biden's going to do in South Carolina. And this is where I think we need to talk about Cornel West, right? Because Cornel West is running as an independent. But if we're honest, Cornel West is not an independent, right? He is truly a liberal who is courting the vote on the left, right? He is not getting votes on the right. He is courting votes on the left. He is a liberal. He started out in the Green Party. Then he went to some other parties. No, he actually started out with a different party, but then he went to the Green Party. But he's obviously a left-leaning candidate who is looking for votes on the left. He most recently, I think in October and November, he finally switched to independent. But he's not a true independent. He is a left-leaning candidate. And if I were Cornel West running for the liberal vote, I would go in there into South Carolina and I would force Joe Biden to campaign there. I would court the black vote. I would point out the hypocrisy of both Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. I would say, yes, they're saying they're giving you their first voice, but they've already concluded your voice doesn't even matter anymore. And you have a right to really make a difference in this primary. And I would love to see Cornel West just campaign, even though he's not running in a primary there, just to campaign like crazy in that state and force Joe Biden to sweat. It's not likely that Cornel West is going to win the presidency, primarily because he is only courting votes on the left. And so if he wants to make a splash, he needs to make a lot of noise in the primary period. And he needs to go head to head against Joe. I personally think Cornel West would have done much better had he run as a Democrat and actually been in these primaries against Joe Biden in all of these states. I think that would have given him a much better chance than running as an independent because he's not courting votes from both aisles. He is courting votes primarily from the left. And it's fascinating, right, to even watch how the Democrats and liberals are responding to Cornel West. Here is an article I want to share with you. It's out of I think it's a New England article, and let me share it in the chat here. And it was written not too long ago. It's called Cornel West is the Charlatan of the Year, an independent candidate for president who doesn't care that he might spoil Biden's reelection because all he cares about is himself. And right, this is, again, as someone who ran as an independent and who watched the paranoia of the Democratic Party, this is the whole mantra of the Democratic Party, which is the votes of liberals belong to whoever white landowning male we nominate, and anyone else is simply trying to steal what is already theirs, which is the vote of the left or the liberal voter. And that's very much what they're saying about Cornel West right now, which is he is merely trying to spoil Joe Biden's chances. There's this white landowning male who we've now proclaimed as our nominee, and this black man is trying to disrupt that. And again, that's hogwash. Those aren't Joe Biden's votes. Joe Biden has to earn those votes. And he should actually get out there and campaign, not against Donald Trump yet, but against other people who are also courting the same votes that he's voting for. They are not his votes. They're not his votes. They're up for grabs. And I hope Cornel West gets as many of them as he can. Because those votes do not belong to the Democratic Party, and they do not belong to another white landowning male. Anyway, so again, Cornel West, if you're listening, my advice to you would be to switch your party again. You're probably too late to do it, but you should have ran as a Democrat, and you should have gone toe-to-toe with Joe Biden in the primaries in all of these states. I think that would have given you your best chance of winning. So anyway, I'm going to share one other article. I was wanting to show this one earlier, and I lost it in my list of articles here. This is just an article about Nikki Haley and her campaign in South Carolina. And I want to put that out for you right there. So something I'm not talking about right now, and I may bring this into the discussion later, I'm not talking about all of Trump's court and media circus that he's doing and the antics that he's pulling in all the courtrooms he's sitting in across the country. I'm not talking about those right now. I'm merely at the moment talking just about this campaign. And I want to share this article. Or maybe I did already share this one about the RNC. Let me look to see if I did share that one. Yeah, I encourage you especially to read the NBC News article titled "The RNC Member Drops Resolution to Name Trump as the GOP's Presumptive Nominee." Trump initially supported the move to name him the presumptive nominee. He has obviously been pressuring Nikki Haley to drop out of the race. He's pretty much declared this nomination is his own right now. But when he began when there was pushback against this resolution to name Trump the nominee, Trump's like, oh, well, no, we have to let the voters decide. Again, Trump doesn't give a crap about the voters. He is playing an authoritative role here, but he's did that merely for the way it looked, for the way it looked, and he obviously is considering himself the presumptive nominee right now. And so I would encourage you to read that article. I think the thing I want to talk a little bit about here for a moment is I would have loved to have seen what this campaign could have been. What this year, the 2024 campaign could have been. I'm glad, I mean, the Republican Party, the GOP, right, they're kind of having their own turmoil where you have Trump and pretty much everybody else. And Trump appears to be winning that battle for the heart and soul of the RNC. But there are a lot of people, including a lot of people with money, who are like, we are not going to support Trump. And so the quicker that the GOP nomination goes to Trump, I think the quicker we're going to see a very divisive and maybe even a lot of turmoil within, or the more we're going to see divisiveness and turmoil within the Republican Party. Because there are a lot of people in the party who do not want to see Trump represent them. And I still am kind of keeping an eye on Liz Cheney, right? I do think it's still a possibility she could try to run either as an independent or some other alternative, right? Because one of the ways Biden got elected back in 2020 is he courted the moderate Republican vote. He kind of left his liberal base and he courted the moderate Republican vote. And he kind of dissed the people on the far left of his party as he went more towards the center. And I wouldn't be too surprised if Liz Cheney stood on the sidelines throughout most of the primaries and then into the general election, threw her hat into the ring, and in the general election tried then to court the moderate Republican vote, who will say, yeah, we're not going to vote for Trump. So I'm going to keep a little bit of an eye on her. But in the Democratic Party, right, if Biden would have been a true statesman, and he promised he was going to be a great statesman coming in, and here he is, this over 80-year-old man clinging to power, when very clearly he should have been out of respect even for the process, been a one-term president and said, yeah, I came in, I did this job for 4 years. We even did a very good job. And now I'm going to turn this over to a younger generation who can even take it further. But he is so convinced he's the only one who can go head to head with Trump. And I would have loved to have seen a Democratic primary with faces like Vice President Kamala Harris, Secretary Pete Buttigieg, maybe even Cory Booker. I would even love to see Deb Haaland going in there for the Democratic nomination, right? I think this really could have been a turning point where the Democratic Party said, yeah, we are going to literally hand over the reins to a younger generation and allow them to shape the vision. But they've decided, Joe Biden refused to give up that power, just like so many other members of Congress have done, right? Both Democrats and Republicans. You have all of these 75, 80-year-old men and women who are clinging to their seats because they just refuse to give up power. It's like they don't trust anybody and they refuse to give up their power. And it's really hurting us politically, in my opinion. And so, yeah, I would have loved to. And again, if I was a Democrat, this would have been a great time to challenge Biden. You would have absolutely drawn the ear of your party. But if you wanted to really force your party in a new direction, Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Cory Booker, Deb Haaland, I would have loved to have seen you challenge Joe Biden in a primary. I think that would have been a very healthy thing for your party. And again, let the party decide. Joe Biden is over 80 years old. He should be facing a challenge for the nomination. It should not just be assumed he gets entitled to a second nomination and possibly a second term in office. He needs to demonstrate that, especially at his age. Those are my thoughts. Those are the things but yeah, so there's a lot going on in this campaign right now. There's a lot to kind of pay attention to. I really hope over this next year to really engage some good dialogue. I'm looking at people I can invite on to my second cup of coffee to join me for a cup of coffee and a good discussion about politics. I'm hoping even in the next few weeks to be getting a few guests lined up to have some conversations about these things. And I am going to continue, besides looking at where the gaze of the media and the gaze of the white landowning men are, which is solely on Trump and Biden. I'm going to continue looking at people like Nikki Haley. I'm going to continue looking at people like Liz Cheney. I'm going to continue looking at people like Cornel West, because I really think we need more voices in this debate. We need more voices in this conversation. And I don't think these two 75, 80-year-old white landowning men, actually, I think Donald Trump's 78, if I remember correctly. Or maybe 77 or 78. But yeah, I think we need to include more people in the discussion besides these two very old white landowning men who are trying to cling to power in this country. And so, yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to message me. Feel free to comment in here. I think there's a lot of interesting things that we'll be able to watch in these next few months as this campaign continues to go on. But right now, I really like Nikki Haley's attitude, which is she picked up a lot of percentage and closed the gap significantly from Iowa to New Hampshire. And who knows what's going to happen in South Carolina. And so I applaud Nikki Haley, right? She is taking the right attitude. She needs to be in this for the long haul. And if you're a Republican and you are like you're very nervous about Trump right now, right? This is the time. Someone just asked me that the other day. They're like, I'm really afraid that Trump is gonna go in, or what's gonna happen. And I again, instead of trying to convert them to the other party, I said, well, you need to do what you can then to support him to challenge him where he needs to be challenged. And right now, the one in the best position to challenge Donald Trump at the moment is Nikki Haley. And so if you're a Republican fearful about the outcome of this election, I think you need to be thinking not about the general election yet. You need to be thinking about these primaries. And what is it that you can do to make the debate even more robust within your own party? And Democrats, right? You need to get out there and you need to find other ways to lift up other voices, not just in your party, but within other candidates who are courting the left-leaning vote, like Cornel West, right? And say, hey, how can we elevate the things that these candidates are bringing into this discussion? Because this is where this debate needs to happen right now. Don't jump to the general election, because the two candidates are already going there. Trump and Biden want to face each other. They both are already assuming to be the presumptive nominees of their party. And they're bypassing all of the really good and rich and even challenging conversations that can and should be taking place in these primaries. And so if you're a registered Democrat, you're a registered Republican, you need to do what you can to make the debate within this primary season the most robust and challenging and diverse as you can. And think creatively about how to do that, right? What are ways that you can encourage that kind of robust, healthy dialogue within your party? Anyway, those are my thoughts. There's a lot going on, my relatives. I'm actually going to be traveling this weekend. I am traveling. I leave on Sunday. I'm flying into Salt Lake City. And on Monday, I will be attending a remembrance in Preston, Idaho, of the Bear River Massacre. And I'm going to be joining. I'm not speaking at this event, but Darren Perry, who is the author of this book, Bear River Massacre, A Shoshone History, and he is working very hard and very effectively to educate our nation on the horrors of the Bear River Massacre. And every year on the anniversary of that massacre, they are starting to do a memorial service on remembering the Bear River Massacre, and I'm going to be flying out there this year. I'm not speaking at this event. I want to be there, and I want to do what I can to help highlight this event. And so follow me on social media. I'll obviously be sharing pictures and other things about and at this event. And I'm looking forward to being there. So that will be a very good time. If you want to continue to be involved with the work I'm doing and the things that I'm involved in, I encourage you to think about joining my Patreon. And I'm going to share a link with you here on my Patreon site. I do a lot of events every month where I offer presentations. I go deeper into dialogues. I do Q&As. And if you want to support my work, I made the very intentional decision not to monetize my social media, but I am using Patreon as a way for people to help keep my voice as independent as possible without the influence of advertisers. And so I encourage you, if you like what you're hearing, or you want to even go deeper into the discussion, join my Patreon at one of the tiers. And there's a lot of discussion we're having on a monthly basis there. I also encourage you to look at purchasing a signed copy of Unsettling Truths, the book that I co-authored. And there's a lot of resources I have out there to even bring the conversation deeper around that book. Anyway, my relatives, I hope your cup of coffee is as good as mine is. I hope you have a great weekend. I'm looking forward to reaching out on my social media when I'm in Idaho at the Bear River Massacre remembrance service on Monday. But walk in beauty, my relatives. And may we all learn how to walk in beauty together. Hakonat. Oh, let me stop. Jordan Lott just asked a question if I have any events in Salt Lake City. Unfortunately, I don't. I don't have anything set up there. I'm merely going out there, and it's a fairly quick trip. I'm going out there for the event or for the service, but I'm not going to be doing anything in Salt Lake City. So I'm sorry I wasn't able to get anything planned for that. But yeah, I will only be there for that service up in Preston, Idaho, which is about an hour and 45 minutes, I think, north of Salt Lake City. So I'll be renting a car and just driving up there to that. And George, yes, you're right. I will be doing a Q&A on my Patreon site tomorrow. So again, if you want to join me for a Q&A, you can sign onto my Patreon and subscribe to the Ask Questions tier, and we will be doing a Q&A on there tomorrow. So I can't have my relatives. How going that?